One of the most influential figures in Chinese history, Qin Shi Huang made great leaps in both the domestic and military fields during his rule, unifying the whole of China in the process. But what battles, laws, and sacrifices were made to make the first emperor of China? All that and more in today's episode of History Behind Warlords. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our History Behind Warlords series. These videos are brief and oversimplified accounts of the events leading up to the 4 historical campaigns you will be playing in our upcoming castle simulator, Stronghold Warlords. Traveling to the jungle tribes of Vietnam, the Qin Dynasty in China, the Mongol Empire with Genghis Khan, and finally Toyotomi Hideyoshi's fractured Japan, these East Asian countries have vast and complex histories. So strap in for a crash course in history from this guy right here. Next up, the Warring States of China. Over 200 years before Qin Shi Huang was even born, China entered its Warring States period, widely said to have started in 475 BCE, around when King Yuan of Zhou's rule began. This day onward was marked by escalating military conflict and opportunistic legal reform. Everyone and their mums was declaring independence from the Zhous. But even decades before the Zhou dynasty was split into dozens of different states, resulting in the Warring States period, they were already kind of head of a fake dynasty during the spring and autumn period, which preceded the Warring States period. There's a lot of periods in ancient China. And during this time, everyone was kind of like, you're the king, this is your dynasty, but also here's my own independent state and bye. And then when technically during the Warring States period, the Zhou dynasty was still in power, you had every lord declaring independence from them, and they would claim this thing called the Mandate of Heaven, which basically said that they were given the just right by God, by the big man upstairs, to claim rule to their piece of land. And like many classic conquests or declarations of power, when you begin invoking religious sentiment into it, a bunch of people are like, okay, fine, yes, better believe him, otherwise I'm going to hell. The problem is when everyone does it, it's like, who do you believe? And so by 403 BCE, Zhou had become the Eastern Zhou dynasty. And within it, the key state of Jin split into 3 different states: Chao, Wei, and Han. Think of this as the hits the fan moment, where the Zhou dynasty is pretty much there for the taking, leading to over 200 wars during this period. So in summary, you had dozens of different states either up and coming or degrading and declining due to backstabbing, battles, sieges, all that kind of stuff. Think of it as a Chinese Game of Thrones, but times like 1,000. But these inter-country conflicts would bear little significance on Qin Shi Huang's eventual rule. Instead, it was rather the military reforms and domestic policies which would come through due to some key thinkers during the period, especially ones who operated in the state of Qin. While most would call this time of Chinese history the Warring States period, there were also some people who would call it the time of 100 schools. This was due to a number of key individuals who were trying to make sense of the meteoric rise of bloodshed, invasion, and suffering during the period. You had rippling thoughts and theories which would lead to key advancements in philosophical thinking, including the emergence of legalism, Confucianism, Taoism, naturalism, and Moism, some of which lasted and affected dynasties for centuries. Now, there were a number of individuals key to the foundations of the Qin dynasty's military reforms, domestic policies, and foreign affairs. But here we're going to focus on one, and that's Shang Yang. Now, originally from the Wei state, Shang Yang actually immigrated to Qin. He did this with the ambition to make it the most powerful state in China. And he wanted to do this by prioritizing the power of the state and the manpower of the state over all other things, including any sort of feudal system they had in place there. And if momentarily you were to look towards Qin Shi Huang's rule, he would be credited with a great many sort of military, economic, and domestic reforms and policies. But really it was Shang Yang and these early thinkers who laid the groundwork for all of that, and maybe were the inspiration and sort of the original seeds through which Qin Shi Huang got his inspirations and his powers to make these reforms. Now Yang, before falling into disgrace in 338 BCE, introduced pivotal laws into the state of Qin that would propel it into the course of domination. Working under the new theology of legalism, he favoured large armies and full granaries over all other things. Now, due to his legalist nature, Yang credited men with earned respect, earned prestige over those who were given it via sort of bloodline or hierarchy or any sense of feudalism.
For the archer who had fought so bravely, a promotion. They made him an officer.
He actually went as far as to replace the entire feudal division of the Qin state with centrally appointed governors, a move that would actually lead to his brutal death. But before Yang was cruelly pulled apart by chariots for neglecting the feudal lords, he had already placed the keystones for the Qin Dynasty's future successors. Farmers were now rewarded for bountiful harvests, agriculture was now prioritized over luxury resources, military conscription was now in place, and to replace those workers who were conscribed, their jobs were promised to potential immigrants from neighbouring states. And that's just scratching the surface. Yang's work would be continued by various other Qin philosophers such as Li Si and Han Fei. Han Fei, who by the way, Qin Shi Huang has said to have started a war just to meet. Although given Mr. Huang's nature, I'm pretty sure he would have just invaded anyway. Revolutionary individuals had turned Qin into a military and economic monster, with one of the biggest armies and most efficient economies. All they now needed was a leader capable of a mighty campaign. Fast forward to 246 BCE and Prince Zheng, who had become Qin Shi Huang in the future, has taken control of the state of Qin after his father's untimely death at the tender age of 13. Now there is all manner of deceit and deception happening in Prince Zheng's state, but what I want to focus on for the moment is the big picture. Literally a big picture of the current state of affairs in China. Now, good news for Prince Zheng's future ambitions as Qin Shi Huang. The warring states has boiled down to just 7 key players. But while they may be a lot less in number, they are much more powerful. We've got Yan, Chao, Shi, Wei, Han, Chu, and of course Qin. And I'll be extremely happy if I got all those correct. It's an ancient Chinese royal rumble. Except here with massive, humongous, crazy armies, and even bigger egos. And now with military technology advanced, armies of previous tens of thousands were now numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Great strategic works such as Sun Tzu's The Art of War and Wu Qi's Wuzi are being orally circulated. And iron weaponry and crossbows are now commonplace. War has never been seen on this scale in China before, and certainly not this sophisticated or cruel. And the only philosophical learnings that generals and kings are now taking into battle with them are ones of pure human efficiency. And this, my friend, is where you will drop in Stronghold Warlords, helping the Qin state unify the entirety of China in a theatre of war never been seen before. And that was another quick dose of intense East Asian history from your equally unqualified but enthusiastic history teacher, Aaron. Now, I already have done one previous episode to this, a prequel, a prologue if you will, on ancient Vietnam. That covers Hun Kings, Thuc Phan, there's a dragon lord and a fairy princess, you know, it's cool stuff. So if you want to watch that right after this, you can click the link in the description box below. And again, as I said in the beginning, these videos are meant as very brief overviews. If you do want to go on deep dives of your own, I would fully recommend you do. There is just a ton of great ancient and medieval history behind these East Asian nations we'll be covering, just as much as there is in England and medieval Europe and the Crusades, so I fully recommend you go on deep dives of your own. Now to finish, as we always ask, if you haven't wishlisted Stronghold Warlords on Steam, if you could do that right now, that would be fantastic. We'd really appreciate it. You can also subscribe here on YouTube to stay up to date on everything from Firefly Studios, or alternatively, if either of those two options disgust you for whatever reason, you can actually join the official Stronghold Discord, which we recently set up. And I'm in there chatting about Stronghold, Nick's in there chatting about Stronghold, and Natasha is in there chatting about Stronghold. So yeah, join that if you don't like the other two options. You got 3 options there. Come on, you got like one of them. That was a weird way to end the video. I'll see you later.